So my name is Fiona. You can see my picture here. I'm head of doctoral education at the Institute for Academic Development, and my colleague who's also on this call is Louise Mackay, and she also works in the programme for postgraduate researchers at the Institute for Academic Development. We're known as IAD. I hope during your time at Edinburgh you'll get to know us quite well. We have lots and lots of workshops and resources and support for postgraduate researchers, which anybody across the institution can access. So yeah, getting off to an effective start. So as I say, it's a very, very short session. The aims really are to give you hopefully some helpful starters. Sometimes starting a research degree can seem, I mean, it's terribly exciting, and I hope people are very excited about it. But it's a big project, whether it's a master's or a PhD. It's a large, large project, and sometimes it can be a little overwhelming as to know where to start. So there's some things that hopefully I can highlight today that will help maybe get you on your way and being able to take control and ownership of your research degree. So we'll look a bit at that, about the importance of taking ownership for your own development. As I say, some kind of key tips and advice. There are lots more out there, of course, but some key tips, and also to let you know where you can find further support from at the university. So that is what to say. Yeah, my first thing to really stress is that it is your research degree. A research degree is a bit different. It's in some ways a kind of individual pursuit, even if you are part of a bigger research group or a lab. It's a big project that you kind of shape and take it how it's going to go. And so it is your research degree. So there's a few things that you can do right from the beginning to start to take ownership of this degree, and therefore make it easier for you to work your way through it. The first thing I would stress is it's really good to take a bit of time at the beginning to understand what the expectations are. And this might sound a bit odd, because you might think, well, I know what's expected of me. I'm expected to write a thesis and finish. But there's a lot of other kinds of more subtle things and that you should think about. So, for example, knowing what the university's expectations of research students are, and I'll tell you where you can find those. Also thinking about your supervisor's expectations. It's worth having a conversation about just that. What are your supervisor's expectations of you, and what are your expectations of your supervisor? And it's a good thing to have, and that can focus on things like how often you're expecting to have meetings, about feedback, things like this. There's also expectations, the sort of expectations of what kind of writing, what kinds of milestones are there. So are you, for example, expected to do a 10-week report? Have you got if you're doing a PhD, you'll have a first year review. When is that due? What are the expectations of that? How long is it? Do you have to give a presentation? Things like that. It's really good to know what these are right from the beginning. And you can find out about these things through the Code of Practice for supervisors and research students. I've got the link at the end. That is the university-wide Code of Practice that gives you that outlines all the kind of expectations. But also you'll have more local level information, either at your graduate school, institute, maybe your college. So yeah, you don't need to read everything, but it's good to be aware of what the expectations are, and definitely speak to your supervisor about this. On a similar vein, taking time to plan and think about time management. Again, that's not time wasted right at the beginning. again, you can kind of plan backwards from what the milestones are in your degree. That can help work out how do you manage your time. What are the you can sort of have a bit of trial and error about different ways to manage your time right at the beginning. But it is important to have things like breaks, to think about where you work best, how you work best, things like that. Really good things to do at the beginning. And again, there's lots of support out there to help you with working these things out. Another thing that I would think is really important at the beginning is to address anything that you're not very sure about. So, for example, if you're not very sure about some kinds of digital tools, and particularly now at the moment when we're in a much more online world and we're using things like Microsoft Teams all the time, things like that, make sure that you are comfortable with these things and that they can work for you. So working out kind of digital tools, but that can also be things like reference managers. If you're not terribly sure about how to use them, investing a bit of time to understand the best way to use them at the beginning is time, again, not wasted. So other key skills for your research as well, anything that your particular research project may benefit from, again, good to think about. And also good to think about what kinds of skills would you like to build on during your degree as well. A good thing to think about as well. Talking to others, that is a really good thing to do. Again, seems really obvious, but talking to your peers, people who are starting a degree at the same time as you, people who are a bit further on in the process, can be an invaluable source of information and advice. Yeah, anybody else that's involved in research, really worth having conversations about. How did you do it? What kinds of things did you find tricky? What kinds of advice can you give me? And I realize again, in this situation, it can feel a bit more difficult to go and speak to people because you may be more or less more online. So it's also good to try and find where there are support groups and things online. Most most research areas now have active seminar series and journal clubs and things like that you can get involved in that are online as well as in person. So good to find out what's out there. Writing, something that is something you can start right from the beginning. A lot of people think, oh, I won't write until I'm really far into, or I've got something useful to write. But writing every day, even for 10 minutes, right from the beginning, even if you think you don't have anything to write, is a really, really good practice to get into. Just even writing about the kinds of things you're thinking about your research at the moment. Nobody else needs to read it. It can just be for you. But again, getting into a sort of regular writing habit is a really good thing, and that's something you can start from right at the beginning. And the other thing I would really stress is don't be too hard on yourself. People who do postgraduate research degrees tend to be quite hard on themselves generally. They tend to be high achievers naturally, and we come across a lot of people who put a huge amount of pressure on themselves from day one to be much more knowledgeable or much more of an expert in their area than they are expected to be. There is a reason that you're going to do a process which may be a year or 3 years or even 4 years in some cases. That's a big project, and you're not expected to know it all at the beginning. And so it's fine. Ask questions. Find out about your research area. Don't be afraid that you are going to seem like you don't know enough about it. So these things I would really stress are important things to remember at the beginning. So there's a lot of support out there. There's a lot of support at the university and from the wider support structures that postgraduate researchers have. One of the things I would say you should go and have a look at is the Code of Practice for Supervisors and Research Students. If you just Google that, you'll find it for the University of Edinburgh. It's all online, it's clickable, and it's very accessible, and it gives all the sort of expectations that are out there. To say, Louise and I work for the Institute for Academic Development. We have a really large programme of workshops, resources and support for postgraduate researchers. This image you can see on this slide is of our brochure for this coming academic year. Again, it's online, you can find it on our web pages, and it gives you an overview of all the kinds of things that we offer, although we do add to that as the year goes on. You can look at our web pages, and you can also follow the IAD on Twitter. We also have a doctoral college at the University of Edinburgh, which is very new, and has SharePoint site. It has a SharePoint site which you can access using your university login. Again, the link is on this slide, and there are monthly updates on that about what's offered for postgraduate researchers from across the university. So in data management, from the IAD, from the Career Service, from the Students Association, etc. So lots of information there. And also it has a Twitter account, which you can see here